Welcome to episode 2 of the Mindset Advantage podcast with Dr. Trisha Cardner and me, Elliot Rowe. So tell us about yourself, Trisha.
Hey, Elliot. It's Dr. Trisha Cardner. I'm the author of Positive Poker, and I also do mental game coaching for poker players, sports enthusiasts, and business executives.
Excellent. And I'm Elliot Rowe. I'm a hypnotherapist and I specialize working with poker players and UFC fighters. On today's episode, we've got Adrienne Rowsome coming on later, also known as TalonChick. And we're also going to talk a bit about recent psychology news. So what's the latest news this week, Trisha?
Well, I just read a little piece of research and I thought, wow, this could be really interesting to our listeners. So let me set this up for you. Basically, it was a couple of psychologists, and as you well know, psychologists love to take any opportunity to torture people.
Right.
So what they did was they set up a computer game, and it was a very simple game, but on the screen, you could see how far you were progressing in the game, and they promised players that when they got to a certain point, they would win money. But unfortunately, the way the game was set up, you could see your progress, but you were never going to get the money. So they set it up to block you and frustrate you.
So the same way lots of poker players feel as well.
Absolutely. But what's really interesting about this is that they were using brain imaging machinery, if you will, to look at what was going on inside of the heads of these players as they were being frustrated. And interestingly enough, there were very specific parts of the brain that would light up. Particularly the left amygdala and a few other parts of the brain on primarily the left side. Nice. Now, we may be thinking, why is this interesting? The reason it's interesting is because it looks like there's an actual quote unquote rage circuit, or you could even think of it as a tilt circuit in the brain.
Wow, so the frustration from the computer game is just activating that circuit for people.
Exactly. It's activating the circuit. And in lesser animals, for example, rats, they've already determined that there is a very specific rage circuit. Now, we don't have that definitively in humans because some of the circuitry is also involved in other emotional responses.
Okay.
But I just think it's pretty neat to say, hey, there is an actual neural circuit that's firing.
Something's turning on and making you angry.
Exactly.
So it's our job to help people make sure that they don't reach that stage of turning that circuit on.
And you know, something that was interesting about it is people are going to be more likely to be frustrated or tilt, if you will, the more effort you expend. That's one factor. And the other factor is how close you are to your target.
Wow. Yeah, that's very applicable to professional poker then.
Exactly, because think about it. If you've played, let's say you're playing an MTT and you played and played and played and then you bubble, that's more frustrating than if you, say, had, busted out in the first hour.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly makes sense, doesn't it?
Exactly. So people should be aware that certain parts of the brain are lighting up when you go on tilt. And the amygdala is like an alarm response. So it's happening very quickly without us even really noticing it usually. But on the other side of that, knowing that when you do, hit these trigger points, there are things that you can do to strengthen some other circuitry that can help balance that out. And in particular, you want to strengthen the prefrontal cortex. And I think some of the work that you do, Elliot, actually helps with that.
Hypnosis is very, very similar. It's a form of meditation. And as we know, meditation is very good at strengthening those parts of the brain, allowing people to stay calm. The other thing that we'd be doing is trying to reduce some of that emotional response so the trigger doesn't go off quite so easily. So I'm sure if they're testing a lot of people, there would have been different tolerances. It wouldn't be a certain scenario always triggers that level of rage. And the reason different people would have different responses is because of their views on life, how they feel, and sort of their understanding of the game and things like that. So there are definitely things we can do to increase the tolerance that you have to stress before those alarm bells start ringing.
Exactly. But I think it's pretty cool to see how the brain works. And we're just now getting to the point where we're developing the tools that we can actually have a peek in.
Have a look inside. watch the rage lighting up.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that. And this week, as I said, we've got Adrienne Rowsome on, or TalonChick, and let's give her a call now. So, Adrienne, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. And I guess just starting off on the mindset side of things, when did you notice in your career, have you ever noticed tilt really impacting you?
Tilt is such a funny subject, I guess, for me. When I first started playing poker, I suppose there was an element of tilt, but it was very small or very non-apparent to me at the time. When I started to play poker, I played purely because it was fun. I wasn't playing for money. I wasn't playing for my livelihood or anything like that. I was just playing because I loved playing card games. So what tended to kind of irritate me more than tilt me was losing hands. If I lost hands where I felt entitled to the pot, or I lost more hands that I thought was my fair share, that would kind of make me a little bit tilty as I look back now. More so than losing the money.
And was that in terms of tilty, in terms of the way that you felt, or did it change the way you actually played hands at the table?
I think definitely, because I've been always a limit player, the tilt in my game comes out, and it's a little bit more subtle in that I would tend to make looser 3-bets, or I would pay off more bets on the river, because it would just be, at the time, it would be just another $6 because I was playing fairly low limit. But those $6 and $3 and all the rest start to add up.
And is that something that you've managed to curtail throughout your career? Has it started to reduce now?
I think with awareness, I'm definitely able to see when I'm making those calls and making those 3-bets and who I'm paying off and who I'm not paying off quite a bit better. Now that I take a more professional mindset to the game and look at my game and examine my game, I can see the spots where I've made calls, and I can see the sequence of hands, leading up to it, where that tilt has just crept into my game.
Can I ask you a quick question about that?
Of course.
So as you're saying you noticed that it shifted a little bit more as you took on a professional mindset. Can you talk about where you were at in your career when your more professional mindset started kicking in?
Well, I started playing poker in 2002 and started playing online in about 2004, 2005. For the first 4 or 5 years, I played strictly recreationally. If I won money, I would buy myself something or go on a trip, or depending on how much I won. And if I lost, well, that was me paying for my entertainment. Mm-hmm. So kind of about 5 or 6 years in, I started to think, this is silly. Why am I not putting in a full effort? This is real money, and I could be making, significant money. I was working my day job, but was making just about as much in the evening times when I was playing. So I started to, pay attention a little bit more. I read Lee Jones's Limit Hold'em book way back when that was the prevalent game, and started kind of seeking out more information and more resources to improve my game.
And then what happened with PokerStars? How did you become a PokerStars pro?
It is a story of my stubbornness. In early 2011, I was in touch with a friend who knows some people at PokerStars, and they had said that, "Oh, Adrienne, you had almost made Team Online, but they didn't think you could do it." And I hadn't applied. So basically what I took from that is that they were considering me, but that they didn't think that I would be able to manage my life, my job, and playing poker and being a member of Team Online. And for most people, and especially for me, if you want me to do something, tell me I can't.
Right.
So I set out and I started my blog. I started blogging. I started putting in more volume of the poker tables. I started to, really try to think, what about me would be appealing to Team Online, and what about me makes me stand out as a poker player, and how am I a poker professional? And so then through some talks and negotiations, then I was signed to PokerStars in July of 2011. So we're 4 years in now, and I love it.
And just out of interest, did people start playing against you differently when you became a PokerStars Pro?
I definitely find that in multi-table tournaments, people do play differently because there's a certain good feeling when you beat the pro, like you definitely. So I would notice people would play worse hands versus me. They would maybe draw in spots where a draw isn't warranted or isn't, they're not getting the right price for it, just to be able to beat me. I notice it as well when I've played live, like when I played at the World Series and was wearing my patches. They raise a certain amount of attention, and so I would get kind of comments like, "Oh, here the PokerStars Pro is here," and I there would be some people who would avoid me, and then some people who would go after me a little bit more.
What is the experience like as a woman? Because you just don't see that many professional women poker players.
As a woman, it's been certainly interesting. I've started playing live in 2002, and you would walk into the poker room and all eyes turn to you no matter what, and then so you're a little bit hyper conscious of every move you make, everything you do, every pot you win, every pot you lose, every time you show down a hand. So every player that starts out playing poker, I think, has a certain element of nerves and a certain element of, not wanting to make a mistake or stand out or be embarrassed. But as a woman in the poker room, especially 12 years ago, you were already standing out. So it just felt like any misstep you did would stand out that much more. Being a woman in the poker room wasn't that much of a different experience than actually wearing the patch, because similarly, there were men I would play against who wouldn't want me to win a pot. And there were men that I played against who would fold to me and be like, "Oh, sweetheart, oh, darling, here you go. You take that pot," or, for whatever their preconceived notions were of women poker players.
Wow. So yeah, it's quite a difference. And has that changed over the 12 years?
I think it's women are more commonly in the poker room. When I go down to the World Series and play live, that's about the only place I play live now. It's some of the major poker stops. There tends to be, I find, one or two women at a poker table. So it's not unusual for another woman to be at the table with me, which is nice. Like there's a little bit of solidarity in there. But there are certainly still hurdles to cross, and people don't necessarily realize or pay attention to the fact that there are these issues that go on, the sexism, but also then the soft playing and the overplaying.
Yeah, I think I'm glad we're bringing it up and talking about it, because a lot of players will say, hey, we need to increase the player pool in general. And a great way to do that would be to have more women coming into the games. But then sometimes you see it's not always welcoming to women. So it's kind of an interesting problem.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, you just feel like you stand out. And people tend to avoid situations where they feel awkward or where they feel isolated. And definitely your first few times in a poker room can feel that way, regardless of gender. It just stands out more as a woman.
Exactly.
And then just thinking about, as you started out, the things that you learned, what sort of advice would you have for someone, perhaps a beginner in the game or intermediate player, trying to reach the higher levels of the game or wanting to become a PokerStars Online Pro? What sort of advice would you have for them?
I think for any new player, the most important thing is establish why you are playing poker. That's something that's really rang true for me across my career, because in the early days I was playing because it was fun. It was my recreation. So I didn't need to be the best player at the table. I didn't need to win all the money, win all the pots. I just wanted to hit some rivers and scoop some pots. But that's different than I am now. Now I play poker because I want to have the financial freedom to do what I want with my life. I want to be at the very top of the game. I want to be a leader amongst the Omaha community, the female poker community, and do so, continue on in my role with PokerStars. So it's important to set some goals, be clear and focused with what you want to do. You know, if your goal is that you want to play every session at your very best and win as much as possible, you have to have some kind of routine and plan of action to do just that. What I do most of the time is I'll write down objectives. So at the beginning of the year, you know, it's a little bit corny necessarily, a New Year's resolution type things, but the beginning of the year is always a good time to set targets for how many VIP player points I want to get with PokerStars in the year and how I'm going to do that. And so break it down month by month, week by week, day by day. Using a routine, you know, Elliot, I've used your MP3s for the last year and a half.
Oh, thank you.
When I play live mostly, but also online, you know, it's a quick and easy way to just kind of straighten my head out.
Perfect. And then your choice of games, because, you know, a lot of people, obviously, when they think of poker, they're thinking of No Limit because that gets the most publicity. But what games are you playing at the moment? You mentioned Limit and then Omaha. What other games are there that you're playing?
The game I primarily play online is Limit Omaha High-Low Split. So it appeals to me because it's a game where you get to see a lot of flops. And that's kind of always the player I like to be. I like to be in lots of pots, and I don't want to be punished by playing awful hands. So in Omaha High-Low Splits, all the hands kind of play fairly close to each other in terms of equity. So in terms of your chances of hitting a flop, you know, almost any 4 cards you can go with. So it's a good game for people who like lots of action, which describes me quite well.
I was going to ask you, playing Limit Omaha High-Low Split, and for as long as you've been playing it, you know, back when you started playing, there wasn't much available in the way of, you know, books and videos and things like that. So how did you get yourself up to the level that you are now?
You know, one of my good friends explained it to me and explained to me the low and explained to me kind of the basic strategies of the game. A lot of my learning style is through trial and error. A lot of my learning is done hands-on by practicing. So practicing at lower limits, practicing moves, thinking about putting myself in spots where you can win the whole pot. Essentially with Omaha High-Low Split, everybody kind of thinks, oh, it's so boring. You're just always winning half a pot, half a pot, half a pot. The skill behind the game is finding the spots where you can win, where you can scoop the whole pot, or you can win 3/4 of the pot and maximizing the pot and in those spots. So it's a little bit of a different mindset than Hold'em for sure. I do enjoy Hold'em. I play some No Limit, mostly in the multi-table tournaments, but I definitely prefer the variation. I've had some success in 8-game in particular during some of the online, like the World Championship of Online Poker, the W Coupe series. I've had some good successes in 8-game, and I just like the constant variety. It engages me and keeps me attentive.
I'll tell you, the way you're describing it, it makes me want to jump in and start working on my Omaha game.
Come on in. You get lots of cards to play with.
I know. It sounds so much more fun than No Limit Hold'em, where I only got the 2, and most of the time I have to fold them.
Yeah, I really encourage people to, you know, even go play money. Just Hold'em, when it took off and went crazy, and like it really took over. And Hold'em is a great game. I'm not trying to put down Hold'em, but it does become a bit mundane. You know, it just kind of always those two cards. And you know, like I love playing other games like Badoogie and Deuce to 7 Triple Draw, and, you know, jumping into some of those games at a low level or play money. You know, you're not going to get hurt. You're going to have some fun, and it might renew your vigor for poker.
Absolutely.
And I think there's also value to learning all of the different games, especially with people heading to the World Series. I mean, I heard of people in the horse tournament last year, and there were certain games that they were the only person on the table who knew all of the games. So, you know, there's value in learning all the different game types, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, you definitely see it. You see it a lot with the 8-game tournaments, because 8-game tournaments have No Limit Hold'em and Pot Limit Omaha in them as well. So a lot of big pots happen during those kind of series of games. But then when the rest of the games are playing, you definitely see who's the Hold'em player and who's the mixed game player at the table.
And do you notice a difference mindset-wise between the live and the online? If we're thinking about perhaps the frustration or sort of the difficulties mindset-wise, is there any difference for you?
For me, I think that when you're playing online, I find it quite a bit easier to get frustrated and ignore it. Because there's nobody else looking at me, there's nobody else judging me, or, I don't feel like I'm being watched. If I found myself in a live situation where I was really tilted, I'm far more likely to go take a walk than I am if I'm playing online and tilted. So if I'm playing online and I'm irritated and I'm not happy with what's going on, it really takes a lot of effort for me to sit out and take a quick break, take 5. But if I was playing live and I can tell that people notice, it's a little bit harder to hide.
For our listeners who maybe are, more recreational players and they want to make the leap, can you talk about how important the mental skills development is as you're going up the ranks?
It's very much just like anything. If you're starting a new career, a new job, you're playing poker, you need to have a foundation. And poker can be a mentally torturous game. There can be days where you get it in, you put all your chips in over and over, and you have the best hand, and the person gets there. They hit their river, they hit their gut shot, and it can be really quite emotional and quite torturous. So if you have started from a strong mental foundation and grow from there, you'll always have that to fall back on. You'll always be able to rationalize and come back to yourself and say, Adrienne, yes, today was a bad day. Whenever they needed to hit their flush draw, it seemed to come. But that doesn't happen every day. It's not every session that this happens. It was unlucky. Continue, making sure that you're putting in your money good, and you will eventually reap the rewards. And even on top of that, if you're having a series of days where things are going bad, you have that foundation and you're going to say to yourself, okay, let's bring it back. Let's start looking at the hands I've played. Let's start looking at who I'm playing against. Am I playing against people who I know are better than me? Maybe it's time to find a different game to play in.
It sounds like what you're talking about is just really having the discipline and the patience and just, having the right attitude, talking to yourself the right way, making those goals. You're just talking about like a complete package.
Yeah, if you want to be a professional, that's certainly what it takes.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people underestimate the importance of that, especially as you're saying, today is not important. Think about the long term. I really think that's the most important concept for poker players to think on if they start to get upset with certain hands, is that you really can't see your edge over a session. You can't really see it over a week. Really, you should be thinking about your edge over hundreds of thousands of hands rather than these sort of one afternoon.
Mm-hmm. But those one afternoons can be tough in the moment for sure.
Especially if you have a few of them in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah, it starts to accumulate, and that's why we have jobs, isn't it, Trisha?
That's exactly right.
I've always said though, because I work a conventional job too, and it certainly makes it a little bit. I say it makes it easier to win at poker, but what I mean by that is it makes it easier to handle the losing days, and it makes it easier to feel like you win in the long term.
But you're kind of saying, hey, I've got the day job, and I don't know if you still have your day job, but I know like in your PokerStars material that was out, you had the day job, you have the partner, now you have a baby, you have the poker. How do you manage to balance all that?
It's been tough. Everybody kind of says, "Oh, I'm so busy," and you always think you're so busy. Before I met Ryan and and I was single, living the life, I still felt busy. Met Ryan, okay, well now a little bit more of my time goes there. Started working at the hospital, working with PokerStars and doing other stuff. Okay, well my time gets split a little bit more, and you always think you're so busy. But this motherhood challenge has really made me have to look at time, because my son is 9 months old now and he's busy. It's go, go, go. And so it is kind of, I'm on leave from my job as an occupational therapist, thankfully, but I didn't take any sort of a leave from poker officially. I didn't play a lot in the first 6 months of his life just because I was busy trying to learn how to be a mother. And now we've kind of hit our stride a little bit, and between Ryan and I, we have routines, which is why I'm able to talk to you right now, because Ryan is putting Carrick to bed. But it has created a little bit of a different sort of tilt for me. Tilt is just such a funny thing, because when you talk about tilt, it conjures up all these mental images for different people. Some people see like Mike the Mouth Mattisau just going off and then running up one side of somebody and down the other, or they see Phil Hellmuth having a temper tantrum. But tilt is just different for everybody. Probably the thing that tilts me now the most is time, because when I have time to play poker, I want to be able to make sure I'm getting the most of every second I have. So that means I want to be making sure I'm winning the most dollars in every pot, and I'm playing the most tables I can and getting as many hands in as I can. But it also then causes me, the awareness of time causes me to sometimes call in spots just in case. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I can steal a pot here, or maybe I can. And that's kind of tilt in its own right. I'm playing poorly because I'm short on time.
Yeah, I mean, that could be pretty expensive, couldn't it? If you're starting to be more aggressive, starting to play more tables than perhaps you're as comfortable with.
Yeah, and then basically then I've noticed that I started putting myself into suboptimal spots. So I'm looking and, okay, well, there's a couple people sitting at a table. I wouldn't usually play them, but hey, it's the only game running. Maybe a recreational player will come jump in if I start playing at the table too. But so I put myself into awkward situations a little bit, it would seem.
I think everybody needs to be aware, because anybody could have that situation, even if it's a recreational player and maybe they only have so much time after work, and they may be thinking, similar type thoughts on an unconscious level.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, time is precious for everybody. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
It seems like just having your baby and combining it with everything else just really brought it to the forefront for you.
Yeah, certainly. It has all but eliminated my live poker playing.
I mean, that was going to be my next question. Are you guys going to be able to make it to the World Series this year, or is it a year off until that he's a bit more mobile? Or?
Well, he was born at the end of May, so we took last year off the World Series. We'll see. He's pretty upwardly mobile these days. I have had a couple of great experiences playing live since he was born. The first was in early October last year. I went to the UK IPT at the Isle of Man, so the home of PokerStars, to play their main event there. And it was a riot. I had a great time, and I actually managed to finish 12th out of 400 and some odd players. And that was, thanks to some kind of crafty management between Ryan and myself, where Ryan would be sitting upstairs in kind of the atrium with Carrick there. And every time we had a break, I would run up and I would feed him. And then I would kind of reset my mind in the break, quickly use the restroom, and back to the tables. But it worked.
That's an impressive 12th place, isn't it?
We did it for 3 days. So
you worked hard for that.
Definitely. And in January this year, I played the ladies event at the PokerStars Caribbean Adventure. So that was a lot of fun. I fell short of the money that time, and it was a shorter tournament. It was only a few hours away. But similarly, Ryan kind of stationed himself somewhere outside the poker room, and on breaks I would make a real hustle to go find them and take care of business there. So we'll see what the World Series brings.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Isn't that the truth?
But it sounds like the World Series is a real possibility now that you've had a couple of trial runs and you've really worked out your system.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's not really that different than in July. I plan to be going back to work, so it's, I'll be away for full days from him, and so Ryan will be full-time parent on those days. And yeah, same thing when I'm trying to win the main event.
Yes, absolutely.
And in terms of sort of the career side of things, the PokerStars, how much balance is there between that on a normal year? So when you're working, is it a certain number of hours a day that they set you to play poker, or a certain number of hands? How does it work from that side?
Fortunately for me, it's fairly self-driven, and it's fairly self-motivated. So there's not a hard number. Of course, they would like me to be playing poker and working on poker. And so that can be in many different ways, whether it's blogging, whether it's making videos, whether it's actually playing at the tables, those sorts of things. And then when it comes to working as an occupational therapist, those hours are a little more rigid, but I just work casually. So I pick up shifts, meaning if somebody's sick or somebody goes on vacation and they need a fill-in, I'm the Band-Aid that comes to patch the hole until they're back and ready to take over. So both my employments are fairly casual.
And it sounds like you've got a lot of the life balance there, I think, that you were describing earlier, between when you do have a job, when you do have other things in your life, it does take some of the psychological pressure of needing to win or defining yourself by your success in poker, because obviously it's your success as a mother, as a wife, as an employee, those sorts of things as well that you've got in your life. I think that's something some players don't have any balance at all, and that can cause some of the major mindset problems.
Yeah, maybe I have too much balance. No, but I've always loved, working alongside playing poker, because, I've had days where I've won and lost 5 figures, and I've slept a full night after both of them. But I find that keeping the conventional job kind of helps keep the money real as well. So, and it helps kind of keep me balanced and keep me focused on the big picture and what I want to do, what my financial goals are, what my life goals are.
So inquiring minds want to know, are you still driving the BMW that you got with your poker winnings?
I wish. When we moved to the area of British Columbia that we live in now, an SUV was more appropriate, because we wanted to go snowboarding. We wanted to pack in the golf clubs and those sorts of things. So we traded for a different BMW. But I definitely miss it. And I don't think I could have managed with the car seat in the back. It was a 2-door, and it would have been tight. But I think BMW has my heart for a long time. I love those cars.
I tell you, there is nothing sweeter than being able to, purchase something like that with the spoils of your poker winnings.
Yeah, I mean, and it ultimately just was like that was my poker career in a nutshell, or is my poker career in a nutshell. It was just that was why I played. I played because I liked to go to the Caribbean. I played because I liked to buy fancy brand name purses, sunglasses, those sorts of things. And that's what I did with my winnings.
It's great to think that it can be your luxury money. So many people, I talk to, it's about them eating or them paying the rent. But it's nice to hear that, it's something that for you can just bring a bit more luxury, something a bit fun to your life.
Yeah, I think that if poker was to pay the bills, it would change the game for me. I've grown up a game player, and I love playing games like Crib. I love playing, even solitaire. If you get me in front of a computer, last resort, I'll be playing Minesweeper or Solitaire, or if they still even have those games on computers anymore. But, I love playing games, and it brings me joy. So it's really tough for me to make that. It was difficult to make that transition to be super professional.
But somehow you've managed to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I still have my moments of my old Adrienne where I'll play a little bit splashier, and I think that the people who play in my games know that there are days where if you catch me, you'll shake your head at some of my plays and some of the things I do. But it's always just trying out new things, trying to buck the norm and be a little different.
Excellent. And where can people find you? Do you have a website or on PokerStars?
Yeah, my blog is TalonChick.com, and you can nearly always find me in PokerStars. If you have the client open and you hit Control P, it'll come up with a list of pros that are online at that time, and people can come chat to me in the chat boxes. Usually I chat back. If you see that I'm playing from the iPad, though, I probably can't chat. It's just a little bit too difficult. And it probably means that I'm lying in bed beside Carrick as he has a nap.
Yeah, it sounds like the perfect way to be playing poker. Well, thanks for coming on today and sharing all of this information with us. And hopefully you'll get lots of people coming to play you at those games.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
So, Tricia, where can people find out about you and your work?
Well, people can definitely follow me on Twitter at Dr. Tricia Cardner, or they can find my books on Amazon.com, Positive Poker with myself and Jonathan Little. We also have an upcoming book, Excelling at No Limit Hold'em, which is available for pre-order on Amazon right now and will be released during the World Series.
Excellent. And if people are interested in finding out about my work, go to www.pokermindcoach.com. And we hope to see you all next week, or hope you'll all be listening to us. And our guest will be Jonathan Little. So nice and familiar to everyone, I hope. So look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.
Thanks.